Hi everyone, this is Ping. This is a special episode dedicated to the LGBTQ plus series, and this is the third one. So I just tried it for the mini series and see how it goes. I never had a series like this before, but I felt like if I collect a few stories together and put it into a series, it might be more helpful as we follow the topic. Lauren shared a lot about her journeys of coming out stories and all the way from teenage years, and also her interaction with faith and Christian faith specifically, and also what her rationales are around her identities. I will leave the space for you. As I said in the episode note, I'm not gonna make any comments. I feel she's very courageous to share all these stories, as well as the other two guests previously, Steve and Norberto, for the series. And I just want to shout out for them to share. This is a very personal journey, and they're willing to share it with us. And if you have any thoughts or reflection, feel free to share it with me. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook, or even email if it's more personal channel. Let's get started. Welcome to Chai with Ping. This is Ping Robert. In this podcast, I cover immigrant stories, cross-cultural experiences, and minority issues. Join me with a cup of chai and take a listen.
I don't think so.
Okay, sure. Let's get started.
Okay.
Welcome back to Chai with Ping. My name is Ping. Thank you so much for coming back to the show. And I am so excited today because this is the episode of the LGBTQ plus series. Before we start the story and the interview, I just want to encourage you to follow me on Instagram and Facebook. You can also find the information from the episode notes, and you can get some notifications when you subscribe to the channel, either on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to this episode. And yeah, so that's my commercial time. Today, I'm gonna invite this cool guest that I met on campus, and I have several classes with her. And I really admire her, that calmness and scholarly reflection that she always brings in the class. She identifies herself as a queer Latina, and she lives in Denver, Colorado in the US. And she's also a PhD candidate in higher education at the University of Denver. She also works at the University of Denver as a program coordinator for the Colorado Women's College Leadership Scholars Program and Equity Labs. It's pretty cool. We talk about it. That's just a unique programming that she's doing. And she has been in the higher education for more than 10 years as a practitioner and a researcher. She strives to promote diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice in all the work she does. Let's welcome Lauren Contreras.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So excited to be here. And
were you flattered?
I was. Yeah. I was like, I think you captured my essence pretty well. I do try to put off a calm exterior, even though I might not be calm inside. But usually people sense that I bring a calmness, which, I try to do.
Yeah. Have you ever kind of like manifested that hysterical character inside of you?
Yes. When I'm very comfortable with people, that comes out a little bit more. So generally I'm pretty calm, cool, collected, but with my family, with my partner, I am certainly much more silly and outgoing and weird, but I do have to get into a comfortable space. But once I do, people say usually they can't get me to be quiet after that. So
okay. Do you identify yourself as an introvert?
I do. Yes, I'm a pretty strong introvert. I tend to get pretty drained when I'm around a lot of people, but I do really enjoy interactions with people, particularly like these one-on-one or small group interactions is really where I feel like I can be myself and thrive. And and all of that. And I like to be in bigger settings sometimes too, but usually I'll just kind of be sitting in the back observing and figuring things out.
Wow. Okay. So like when you're sitting in a group, you never have the urge like, I want to speak up, but rather you
Rarely. Yeah. Rarely. I
just
let everyone else talk before me. Unless there's something I'm really passionate about or really want to share about. And that happens, from time to time. It depends on the day, depends on the mood I'm feeling. So I might do that.
Okay. Before we dive into your stories, I would invite you to introduce a little bit of your backgrounds and identities.
Sure, yeah. As you mentioned, I identify as a queer Latina woman. I grew up in Texas. I'm originally from Texas. I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas, and I lived there until I graduated from high school at 18 years old. And then I went on to college at a small liberal arts college in Georgetown, Texas, which is near Austin. And I went to my undergrad there. My family is Mexican American. Both of my parents identify as Mexican American, as well as my grandparents. My family has been in Texas for a really long time, actually. So my parents and grandparents both are all Mexican American. My family has actually been in Texas for a good number of generations, I would say. Only one of my grandparents, my dad's father, who I actually did not get to meet, was born in Mexico and then came over to the US. And so, but I still very much identify as being Mexican American, Chicana. It's part of my story and my history and who I am. And I think a lot of my life I have tried to understand more of my history and background and culture, because I think being a third generation Mexican American, a lot of times it's not something, like I didn't learn Spanish growing up. A lot of, my parents and grandparents experienced a lot of discrimination in their time, where they did not pass on the language. And so a lot of it was a journey for me to kind of understand and be proud of that background, which I very much am. And so that, and my family is as well. And I've learned a lot of culture and cultural traditions and things like that through my family. And so I also identify as queer and lesbian. I came to that understanding. I'll go more into that, but I came to that understanding as a teenager, and now have been identified as a queer Latina lesbian for almost half of, or more than half of my life now. The intersections of those identities is pretty important to me as well. I did grow up in a fairly middle class background. Both of my parents, my mom went to college. My dad did not go to college, but they both worked in service industries. My dad was a firefighter for over 30 years, and my mom was a bilingual education teacher for over 30 years as well. So I think their dedication to service and commitment to the community is certainly a big impact on my own life too. I do have two brothers. I'm the middle child of three. I am the only girl. I have an older brother who's about 4 or 5 years older than me, and then a younger brother who's about 4 or 5 years younger than me. Trying to think of other, I think those are probably the most important identities to me. I moved to Colorado about 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago now, after living in Texas for quite some time. And so, I've been here for a while now.
Awesome. Yeah. Since you already mentioned that you're queer, lesbian, Latina, what does queer mean to you?
Yeah, so I think queer can encompass a lot of different things. So I think queer has become an umbrella term for the LGBTQ community, in that, anybody under the spectrum being lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, pansexual, anywhere else along the spectrum of gender and sexual orientations could fall within a queer identity. And so that's kind of a little bit of what it means to me, but I think also it just kind of it encompasses this fluidity to me as well. I feel pretty strongly that, I am a lesbian, and I've only dated women for, like I said, the last half of my life, and would continue to do so. And then, as far as gender presentation, I do identify as female, but, there's times where, I do feel like gender is fluid, and that we can perform gender in multiple different ways. And so I think queer for me, I've been able to more embrace that identity, probably more so in the last few years, because I think it gives this like idea of fluidity, and that our gender and our sexuality is not static. It is fluid and is constantly moving in and out of time and space. And so that's why I think I've embraced the queer identity a bit more.
Thank you for sharing. Then we're gonna move into your journey of being a lesbian, queer, and coming out, and some of the family reaction. Would you want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned, I have identified myself as lesbian and queer for the last half of my life, since I've been in my late teens. But I think the journey begins even before that, right? So before I knew what it was, before I could put a label on it, before I knew anything, so I think as a young person, I always felt like something around like certain women, or especially older women, that were like, I don't know, I just thought they were so cool, and like it was almost like a wanting to be them. But at that time when I was young, I wouldn't say I wanted to be with them or anything, but it was just like this feeling of excitement around them, this energy that made me excited and interested. And so I can take that back to earlier days, when I was like young, like 5 to 10 years old or so. And but I didn't really see it as like a sexual orientation or identity at that point. I, had crushes on boys, and, was into like boy bands. And, I remember in middle school, I had like my room was just like plastered with photos of like boy band members and all the cute boys that people thought and stuff like that. And then it was about when I was like 14, like early high school, is when I developed a crush on a girl that I was in school with. And I didn't know how to identify it. Like, I just knew I wanted to be around her. I knew I wanted to know more about her, but more in a different way than I would a friend, like in a way that I would with probably a boy in the past, at a different time. And so I was like, what is this like weird feeling that I'm having? Like, I was like, I really think I have a crush on this. Like, this is more than just I want to be their friend type of thing. And so I guess another important identity that I didn't, part of my identity, part of my background, more so that I didn't bring up yet, but is definitely a big part of my coming out story, is that I actually grew up in a pretty religious household. My mom's dad, my grandfather, was a United Methodist minister. And so I grew up going to church. I was very involved in church since like the day I was born till the day I left high school. And I was very active in our youth group. I was president of the youth group at different points. I even was involved in things on a regional and national level with the United Methodist Church. So I was very, very involved in church. And so at that time, I hadn't reached that level of involvement, like at 14, but this was part of who I was and how I was brought up. I went to church every Sunday with my mom and my brothers and my family. So, and even though we never really, like my United Methodist churches, I would say they're kind of been in the middle, I would say, in terms of like, they're not the most like unaccepting, but they're not the most accepting either, so they've become more accepting over the years, but and that's been a lot of debate within the church as well. But so it wasn't like I remember one of my friends who grew up Baptist, and he's gay as well, would say that at church, like people would actually say like, being gay is a sin and da da da, and like that was part of the sermon and everything. But at my church, like nobody really ever said that, but I think it was implied in that, nobody was really out. I'm sure there were gay members of the church, but nobody was really out. It was also a very family oriented church, in that, and it was also a Latinx church. So all of the members were part of for the most part, I would say like 98% were part of the Latinx community as well. So that's another place where I embraced that part of my culture. All of these families grew up together, knew each other for, decades. Like we know everything about each other and our families. And so, so everybody was always very welcoming in that sense, because, we all loved each other for who we are, because we knew each other we knew everybody in our family. So I never felt like anybody said like, oh, being gay was wrong or anything, but it was definitely implied, and it was implied, I think, in just the teachings of the Bible and things like that. And, it was definitely like men and women to be together. And those were the things that, I was taught and what I knew. So I knew that, as a 14-year-old, I knew it was against my religious upbringing, teachings. And so that was a real struggle for me. And so once I developed this crush on this girl, I really felt terrible. I was like, this can't be happening. Like, I feel horrible. Like, this is wrong. Like, I need to pray this away. Like, I was like, God, change how I'm feeling and change my mind and all of those things. And so, time kind of passed, and I wouldn't say that, I just kind of, as we kind of move in and out of crushes anyways, like I eventually did not have a crush on that person anymore. The next year of high school, I started dating a boy and was in a relationship with him for about a year. And then I met another girl actually through church, who went to another church in another town, actually. But we were both involved in like the youth group. This was at the same time I was getting more involved in my youth group through church and having more opportunities to travel and meet people from different parts of the state and the country. And again, it was like this instant connection. That was this feeling I had never had before. And we did initially become best friends. We were just friends for like the first year. But feelings continued to grow. And this time they were mutual and reciprocated. And at that point I knew like, this isn't going away. Like, this is not something I can just get rid of. These feelings will come up for different people over time. And so I started to embrace it a little bit more. It was challenging, I would say, especially in those initial years, just because, again, of the religious experience. I felt like I was doing something wrong. Like, I shouldn't be with a girl or with someone of the same sex. And so I remember, we were both kind of navigating it because we were both very involved in the church. And so it was hard because like, we didn't want people to know that we were gay or together, because at that time that would have been, I feel like maybe now it might've been a little more, I don't even now, probably not, but it definitely was not something that was going to be accepted at the time. And I don't know, we were both trying to figure out if like this was something we wanted to do or not, or yeah, I mean, but we couldn't resist the way that we felt about each other and continue to be in that relationship with one another. And so that was actually my senior year of high school, and that her and I were in a relationship together. And then we each went on to college. I actually went to college close to where she was from Austin, and I went to college near Austin. So that really didn't play into why I went there. I just wanted to go to that college. And then she ended up going to college in San Antonio, which is about an hour from Austin, or hour and a half, I guess. And so we knew that we could commute and see each other and that kind of thing. And so we continued to see each other throughout the first year of college. And that's when I started coming out more so. The first person I came out to was actually one of my good friends in high school that I grew up with since, like, I've known her since I was 5 years old, and she's one of the first people I told. I remember we were on a bus. I think we had to come back from a field trip or something. I don't know what we were doing. And I just, told her, and she was just super, said she still loved me, and she would always be my friend. And like, that just meant everything to me in that moment. Cause I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if people are going to still want to be friends with me, or, especially this person who had known me my whole life. And so that meant a lot. And so she was the first person I told, and that was after like almost a year being in this relationship. So I had really kept it to myself, which I think is kind of a theme in my story, is like, and it does create a lot of isolation when you can't be your full self, and it is hard. It is challenging. And so having people that are accepting you for who you are really takes a weight off of your shoulders in that sense. So I was glad to be able to tell someone, and that they were accepting and loving.
I can see that you're getting a little emotional. and
it's okay. I get emotional about a lot of things.
Oh, okay. Go. I felt like your friend showed her acceptance and makes you really safe, or like, do you feel like more secure in that relationship, or, just in your community, at least there's one person is open?
Yeah. I think it did kind of open the door a little bit more, where I was like, okay, I told one person and she responded okay. So maybe it's okay if I tell someone else, and yeah, so it was just a burden lifted off of my shoulders, like I had been hiding and trying to keep secrets and all of this for, almost a year at that point. And so it was just, it was a relief, I would say. So to be able to tell someone what I was experiencing or what I was feeling at the time.
When did you decide to tell more people, or even including your family?
Yes. So then as I got to college, I was still in this one relationship, and my parents knew that this person was my friend. Like, we had been friends before we were together in a relationship. So they knew who she was, and like, she came to our house and like all that stuff, I went to her house and out, and I don't know exactly what happened on their end, but I've never asked. But when I was away at college, I remember, getting the sense that my parents might kind of be on to figuring things out. When I would go back home, like my dad in particular would like bring up certain things or ask, like, I have a really good friend who's actually gay now as well. But we were like also, we went to middle school and high school together, and we were pretty much inseparable, and he's male. And so my dad would be like, oh, I thought you and Marcus's name would get together. And I was like, no, we're just friends, And so he would ask stuff like that, or he would bring up my cousin who was gay at the time, and like just randomly, who was like not even related to him because it was on my mom's side and my parents were divorced. So he was like, oh, how's, that must be challenging for her or something. And I was like, yeah, like I guess, and I kind of knew what he was trying to do, but I was like not ready like myself to tell him, but he was trying to drop some hints. I could tell. And so, and then I think he got my mom involved, which I said, my parents were divorced. My parents got divorced when I was 12. I was 18 at the time. And I think he started telling my mom, like, I think Lauren might be gay. I think she might be in a relationship. This is what I'm imagining. I don't know. And, my dad's actually passed now, so I couldn't even ask him. So I'm not sure. I could ask my mom though. And so then I remember, I don't remember what, it had to have been, I don't know. It had to have been maybe like spring semester of my freshman year. My mom called me, and we talk on the phone, but like she called me and was like, I don't even remember how she asked it, but she said something to the effect of like, your dad is saying that you might be gay, or like, I'm not, or I'm just wondering if you are, like, all I ask is that you be honest with me. And I was like, okay, well, they're asking me, they want me to be honest. And so I said, yes, I am gay. I'm in a relationship, and, and even though to me, it seemed like maybe they were ready because, or at least they were curious because they were asking. They definitely were not ready to hear the answer on the other side, which, I think parents definitely, have challenges with receiving that information. And so I knew it would be challenging for them to hear that, but at the same time, I just felt like I needed to be on, like, it was so hard to like not be myself and to lie to my parents, who I love, and, don't want to not tell them the truth about what's going on in my life, so, but yeah, my mom was pretty quiet, I think, after I told her, and then she didn't really say too much. And then I remember my dad, when I was like driving, I remember I was in the car, I was driving from Austin, San Antonio, actually. And I think it had been a couple of weeks since we had talked after this happened. He finally called and wanted to talk, and it was just a very emotional conversation, probably a conversation you shouldn't have while you're driving, actually. And so I just remember shaking, and I was like trying to drive. And he was just like, but your life's going to be so hard, and dating women is challenging, and they can be mean. And I was like, and I just remember saying like, well, you date women, and so and then he was just like, okay. And he was just, he took it pretty hard, I would say. Again, I don't know all of the ways that he dealt with it or anything. But within time, my parents actually were pretty, I think their initial reaction was tough, but they always, they never said like, we don't accept you, we don't love you, or anything like that. Like, they definitely still made sure to know that I was loved for who I was. I think they just didn't like understand what I was going through. And I think it was just, a vision for me that they hadn't seen, and were trying to come to reality with at that point. And so as I was trying to figure it out myself too. So, but yeah, I think it was tough, but within a month or two or three, I don't remember the exact timeline, but, they definitely, like, they still, like, they had my girlfriend over to the house. Like, they treated her with nothing but love and kindness and respect. They always have treated me that way as well. And so I think it was tough in the beginning, but I think they did the best that they could.
It sounds to me that your parents care more about how you will be perceived in the society other than, you know, what they see of you, because they love you and support you, but they're kind of scared that how you walk out in the world and people are gonna judge you, or there will be a lot of challenges that you're gonna face.
Yeah, I think that was part of it. I think, yeah, at least that's what they shared with me. Like, I think they like did see a lot of, challenges, and or thought there would be challenges to my life, and things like that. So. Yeah.
Was there any moments that you felt you were oppressed or misunderstood or unaccepted because of your identities?
Yeah, so I would say the moments that I have felt that way, I mean, thankfully, I have never felt, or I've never experienced, I would say, like outward attacks, right? Like, that we think of, instantly, like this blatant, people calling you names, or like, discrimination or things like that. At the same time, I have lived in bubbles. I like to say I have chosen to live in places where people are generally accepting. I work in a field that is generally accepting. I work at places that are generally accepting. So, I've always lived in big cities, Austin and Denver, where there's always a community of LGBTQ folks around. So I think that has maybe helped protect me from some of the discrimination that is certainly out there. I think some of the ways that I have felt oppressed, though, is, more so on a societal structural level, particularly in terms of like, our laws in society. I mean, now, for the last 5 years, we've had marriage equality, and I am married to my partner, who's a woman, and was able to do that, I guess, almost 4 years ago now. But as I was coming into my own, 10, 15 years ago, like that was not an option. And that was not something that I saw as an option for myself in my life. And I think that is a form of oppression, because I was not able to have the same, I could not at that time see that I would have the same opportunities of equality for my life and the relationships, just simply because of the person that I loved. And I think that did harm to me and to the relationship I was in before, because I could not envision a future, because I had never seen what it was like for two women or two men, or non-binary folks to be, transgender folks to be together and to have the same rights that straight heteronormative folks had, heterosexual folks had. And so I think that limited a lot of, or I think I had like a lot of internalized oppression is I guess what I'm saying. And that I felt like I couldn't see that future for myself. Also, there was limited media representation of LGBTQ folks. There's a lot more now, which I'm very thankful for. There's so many great shows out there that I'm like, oh, my 18-year-old self would have loved this, but at that time there was not that. And I was struggling to see people like myself, particularly people that were queer and Latinx as well, and lesbian and Latinx, and, and all of the different intersectionalities of identities. So I think that was one form. And then I think another way is, not so much that anybody at my job has oppressed me or anything. Nobody's like, it hasn't prevented me, I don't think, in like pursuing my career or my field. But I do feel like with my job, especially because I do work with undergraduate students, there is a level of like, sometimes I'm not sure of how out I should be at work. Just because, I don't know, students are coming from all different kinds of backgrounds and experiences. And like, I don't want that to be a barrier between our connection, but is how I've thought in the past. And I think I've come now to more of an understanding of where I'm like, I rather students be authentic with my students, because I think they appreciate that so much more. And I rather be someone that they can look to as maybe a role model. If there is another, Lauren out there from 18 years ago, their freshman year of college, that is trying to look for a queer person to look to. And even if it may be uncomfortable to some, I want to be able to be there to support those that need me or need to see a role model. Again, especially somebody who's queer and Latinx, because that is even less so than, just queer or just Latinx. And so, to help maybe some students that haven't been exposed to people like myself as well, to maybe see, I am a real, a person, I'm a human, I have same thoughts, feelings as other folks. And so to kind of help people have a greater understanding of what it's like to be queer and Latinx as well. So I think that has been a journey that I have been on too, is just more embracing who I am and my identity and living in my full self while at work too.
Is it okay that we go over for about 10 minutes?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I feel like the next and also our next section is about, your thoughts. You already touch upon that already. Like you want to be a role model in higher education. And because of there's not that many queer Latina role models for younger generations. So that's very important for you. Is there anything that you wish people knew about you or that you would want to say to different communities?
Yeah, I think, it is a journey of understanding. I think, I may at this point in my life seem like I have things a little bit more together, but it's certainly been a journey to get here. Lots of great therapy that I've had, lots of great friendships and relationships and mentors that have poured into me as well. And that I'm super thankful for to get me to where I am. My partner, of course, has been super supportive of all that I do. And I think we have, gone through our own journey of understanding who we are together too, which is also kind of fun. And so that's good. I'm trying to think of other things that people may not know about me. I think a big one is just that I have to work to, I've had to do a lot of work on myself, a lot of self-reflection work to be to where I'm at. And it's a continuous work and journey that I do. And, as human, I do falter and make mistakes and things like that, but I'm on a continuous journey to be my best self. And that would be something I would share with the community as well. Is we're always on a journey of learning and understanding who we are and our identities. We're constantly evolving and learning throughout our lives. And so I would just say, I think it's okay to continue learning and to continue working on yourself throughout your life is, I think, very important. And for other young Latinx queer folks like myself, I would just say, be who you are, be proud of who you are, find people that are supportive of who you are and that will love you for who you are. I think another thing that's really helped me throughout my journey has been, I've been a part of different groups that have been very supportive in undergrad and grad school. And I think those helped uplift me as well. And so finding groups of like-minded individuals is, I think, really helpful too, to be able to gain confidence and feel a sense of belonging no matter where you are.
I just thought about something because you said that you were super involved with your church and the youth group.
Yes.
How is your interaction with church and your faith now?
Good question. Yeah, good way to bring that back. Yes. So that's also was a journey that I have been on. So actually, once I got to college, I think most college students kind of aren't as involved in church anymore. as they maybe once were when they were growing up, when they were with their families and stuff. But so I think that's kind of normal, but I think it was more to a level for me where I did feel like, I didn't want anything to do with the church for a while. I think I actually ended up I was a sociology major in college. And so my final capstone paper was actually a research paper about gay and lesbian young adults finding community at a church that was supportive of, I can't remember what it's exactly called, but it's a church for gay and lesbian folks. So that's kind of like, I think that helped me because I was able to see and meet other people that were coming to terms with their Christianity or spirituality and religion and their gay and lesbian identity. And so that helped me a bit to continue that. I haven't been as involved in church as I was back in those days. I would consider myself more of a spiritual person. My partner and I did go to a church here briefly for a while. It was actually a Methodist church. It's very open, has a large gay and lesbian population here in Denver. And I did feel very supported there, but we haven't gone in a while. But I do feel like there are spaces now. If I did want to embrace those identities, I could do it a little bit more. The churches have become more supportive, and I feel that you can find support at some churches for LGBTQ folks, and I'm really glad for that. I think that's important. And for me personally, I think it's just part of who I am in ways that like I can't. It's just like embedded in who I am and my upbringing. So there's definitely times that come out where I'm like, oh God, or else, I pray sometimes, or if it's a difficult time, or, I even think about, well, God, this was, not part of God's plan, or, like things like that, And I think it's just like my mom kind of talking to me too, but because those are things that she says. But I would say that I have a spiritual aspect to myself and, do believe in a higher being of sorts. I'm just not involved in a organized religion. I think there's still a lot of oppression that the church perpetuates as well towards many groups of people, LGBTQ folks, women, lots of different groups. So other religious groups. And so I can't say that I strongly identify with a faith at this point or a church, but I do feel a little bit more that I have healed a little bit more from those previous experiences.
Thank you for sharing, because that's a very personal piece of the whole story as well. And I learned so much from your journey, and thank you for being so open up and honest about your experience and your stories to share on this podcast. Do you want people to find you? How do people find you?
Sure. Yeah, you can find me. I am on Twitter, and my handle is at L as in Lauren, CON 678. And then I am also on Instagram, and my handle there is at ELLE underscore ARE underscore CEE. Sorry, I had to think about it because it's like my name, or it's my initials, but spelled out. So LRC. And then you're also welcome to email me too. My email is Lauren, LAUREN, my first name, .Contreras, CONTRERAS @DU.edu.
Thank you so much. I'll put all the handles and contact info in the episode notes. And in this episode, we talk so much about Lauren's journey, stories of coming out, and how you identify yourself as a queer Latina, lesbian as well. That's just a lot of intersectional, well, how do you call that word? Intersectionality.
Yes.
Intersectionality. That's right. So, and then right now you're working in the higher education, so hoping to bring that influence and a positive role model to the younger generation. And we also talk a little bit about your interaction with church and faith, and now moving towards being a spiritual person. Is there anything that we missed?
I don't know. I think we covered a lot in a short amount of time. I mean, we didn't talk too much about my scholarly identity, but that's all good. It's there. I also do a lot of research and things, and but I think it's all part of who I am, and I think everything that I am, I bring to all that I do, and it all connects and intersects in some way. So, and I think that's the way that I have found that I can live my best life, is when everything kind of connects and has purpose and meaning and connection with one another, because that way I'm not having to silo out who I am and my identities in different places, and I can just bring my full self everywhere I am.
Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Chai with Ping. If you think someone will benefit from this episode, don't forget to share it with them. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. If you like my show, you can buy me some chai with small donations. Details are in the episode notes. Till next time.